Here's how his faster writing machine worked. Gutenberg figured out a way to make these metal letters. He made hundreds and hundreds of copies of each letter of the alphabet. Here, for example, is a backwards capital O. Trust me. Now it's upside down and backwards. How he made these letters is fascinating. Gutenberg is a jeweler or a goldsmith by training. So he knew how to work with metal and rings and things like that. In fact, his family has positions, has jobs at the local mint where they're making the coins. They're stamping the metal and making the shape of coins. So Gutenberg is watching this process and realizing he needs a lot of letters for the book. A lot of O's, a lot of A's, a lot of B's. But you don't want to sit there and carve 1,000 O's out. It would take you forever. You want to shape the letter once and then make copies of that shape. Here's how he does it. He takes a blank piece of steel that's unhardened, soft steel. Doesn't mean you can bend it, but you can take a metal file like you find in your garage, you start filing the end of it. After the end of a day or two of work, if you did your job right, you would have filed a letter on there. And if you don't think that's hard, sit in your garage for a couple days with a piece of steel and a metal file and see what letter you can make. A hyphen is real easy. Now that your letter has been shaped, we have to harden the steel. This is a process known as tempering. You've seen it with blacksmiths. When you grab it with some tongs, put it into a hot flame until it's glowing red, then you quickly dunk it into a bucket of cold water. The change from hot to cold tempers, it changes the metal, hardens it. Or there'd be a loud popping sound, it might crack in half, which would be really exciting having just spent the entire day shaping one letter. Now that you have a hardened letter here, we take a piece of softer metal, such as copper, place this on top, take a hammer and we strike down on top of it. You punch it. This is actually called the punch. You stamp the punch into the softer metal and you form what's known as the matrix. And the matrix is the master from which you make the copies. You think of it like a cookie mold or a jello mold in the kitchen. So if we're not going to pour liquid jello into this or cookie dough, we're going to pour liquid metal, not ink, but liquid metal to form a letter. The punch now goes into a safe place. We're now going to be using the matrix. And this is where Gutenberg's genius is found, when he invented this tool. This is the amazing tool that changes the world. And the printing press gets all the credit because it's big and you can see it. But the printing press really is a modified machine that already existed. It's a modified wine press or an olive oil press. Gutenberg changed it a bit to have it function for what he needed to do for printing, but that machine basically existed, a giant screw that you turn and create pressure. But when he invented this tool, the world changed. And the two halves of this tool come together and they interlock. And when they interlock, it forms a mold. You have a rectangular cavity on the inside there. We're going to take our matrix, place it face down on top of the cavity, slide the two sides together. And this right here is actually a spring. So we move the spring over on top and it holds all three pieces together. I turn it over on the other side, you can see the other end of the cavity. It looks like a giant tooth. Think of your cavity in your own mouth or in your teeth. This one almost looks like it has fangs on it. So we're going to use the hole in this end to fill up the cavity with metal. The next thing Gutenberg had to figure out was, well, what kind of a metal do I use? You have to make thousands and thousands of these letters. Do you want to use an expensive metal or a cheap metal? Probably as cheap as you can get away with. You need a metal that has a certain amount of hardness because we're going to be putting pressure on it over and over again, so the softer metals won't work as well. But you probably also, do you want a metal that melts at a high temperature or melts at a low temperature? You probably want it to melt at the low temperature, because then if it melts faster, you can save money, you can turn your fuel off. Gutenberg experimented with all sorts of metals. Nothing quite worked. This is a long process. I mean, we don't know exactly how much time, but he probably took anywhere from 5 to 10 years perfecting this process. So he comes up with no one metal by itself worked for Gutenberg. So then he had a great idea. He decided to mix metals together, form what we call an alloy. So the alloy that Gutenberg worked with had three metals. First one, lead, which is soft, but it's also really cheap. Second metal, tin. And the third metal, antimony. Most people haven't heard of the word antimony, but it's the next metal after tin on the periodic table of elements, number 50 and 51. When you put those metals together, they actually melt at the low temperature of 550 degrees. And that's your oven on high broil. I mean, it doesn't melt the oven. The oven's made out of steel. To give you a difference, steel turns liquid at 2,500 degrees. And a wood fire only reaches 1,100 degrees. So you cannot use wood to melt steel. You can use wood to melt our lead alloy here, our metal alloy. Okay. So let's take a look now at the actual casting of it. So here's my metal melting away. Lead, tin, and antimony. Temperature, 550 degrees. Trust me, that's hot. So it solidifies quickly. And it melts quickly. So let's go ahead and make a letter now. Let that metal get back in. Going to grab my mold. Pour our metal into the cavity, it fills it up, it solidifies quickly. A good typecaster can make 2 or 3 letters a minute. I mean, it takes you all day to make the master matrix, but once you have that, you can start casting, literally 100 letters, 100 to 150 letters an hour. And once they're made, you can use them over and over again in the printing press. Let's open it up, take the matrix out. We can see the letter inside the cavity. So the matrix forms the shape of the letter there for you perfectly. So if you make 1,000 M's, they're all exactly the same. If you carved them, you would have them, but they all be different. They all be uniquely made. The mold actually controls the rectangular shape. That way all the letters fit with each other in rows, like soldiers, and they're all exactly the same height. And the height's important because all your letters are going to be put under pressure at one time. If one letter is just a little bit too short, it won't print. Gutenberg's accuracy in the height of the letters was within 1/100th of an inch. One thin slice out of the inch. And by the way, in making the letters here, the last step here is that you have the triangular piece. That's known as a jet. We have to break that off. So they would take a hammer and whack it off. What you end up then is a rectangular piece that you use in the printing press over and over again. That's Gutenberg's invention. That's the perfection of making movable metal letters. And this one here, once we make it, we can use it over and over again. This one's already 50 or 60 years old. I can still work with this letter and put it into the printing press. Gutenberg's tool, by the way, remained unchanged making these letters for over 400 years. 1850, they're still using Gutenberg's basic principles and concept and his tools to make the letters that are used in the presses that change the world.